All right, good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day in Annapolis. That's right. Just for fun, after we do the Garvey bond bill, we're going to go in reverse order on your sheets. But let's start up with where we left off on that Garvey issue. Matt?
So Senate Bill 259, you should have a new reprint on your desk. This is the Garvey bond bill. This would, if you recall yesterday, we were talking about this. It would create a revolving line of credit with the Garvey bonds. Senator McCrae's amendment would only allow those Garvey bonds to be used for certain projects. They're on page 2 of the reprint. There was an alteration last night to the projects that the money could be used for. And you can see the 6 projects listed on page 2.
Okay. Senator McCrae? Senator McCrae?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as stated, was able to work through this with the Secretary. This is cross-jurisdictional. It's looked at somewhat as a regional piece of it, of the big projects that are in the CTP from that standpoint, and wanted to move forward with that in some form of a motion, Mr. Chair, the amendment.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Second.
As amended, all those in favor? Unanimous?
Senate Bill 259.
Okay, Fairhill, I think there was.
Yep. Senate Bill 919. There should be a reprint on your desk. I believe the committee talked about this last Friday. This was the bill that dealt with horse racing at Fairhill, and then also a mandated appropriation for projects at Fairhill, which is, I believe, in Cecil County. And so the bill would adjust the racing requirements that are currently in existence at Fairhill. It would allow for less than 1 day of racing. It would allow the racing meets to occur without the need for an agricultural fair. It would take away a mandate that requires certain types of races to be run. It adjusts the takeout, which is the tax rate on parimutuel betting, to allow a lower tax rate than 25%. I think that's just to adjust for industry standard. And then I think the last of it is on page 3 of the reprint. This would create mandates on the governor to include $1.8 million beginning in 2023 for the project, and then $1.3 million for fiscal years 2024 through 2027. And I believe the idea is there's currently they're building out the facility to use it for equestrian eventing. So the mandated piece of it really isn't going towards the racing end of things there. They're doing these eventing horse meets there, where they do dressage and jumping and other things related to equestrian activities.
So as you heard before, this has kind of become a big deal at that location for, I guess, even nationally, maybe worldwide. Is that right?
Yeah, I did do some researching and found a couple articles where in this world of equestrian eventing, they like to hold the meets there in Fairhill, and it's an Olympic sport, and so this one article I found talked about this being the number one place to do that other than in the Olympics. So it's I didn't know that world existed, but it does.
Senator Stalling?
I think this is just a golden opportunity for Maryland to shine. I mean, this is a rare moment, and I think we have an opportunity here to show the nation that we got something here very unique, and I just want to say I'd like to move favorable
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. All right, 9:26.
Move unfavorable.
Might want to jump to Phil.
What are we doing?
Jump to Philip. I'll help Erica get the amendments for
Oh, this is Philip?
Oh, this is Philip?
Is it? 9:26?
No, no.
Yeah, we're working on printing the amendments. So if we-
Oh, jump to the next one.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, 8:03, or is that not, you don't have that either, do you, Philip? You have 286? You gotta have 286. All right, 286.
Senate Bill 286 alters the Behavioral Health Crisis Response Grant Program. Finance is primary, you all are secondary. The B&T component of the bill is regarding the appropriations to the program. The program is used for grant proposals for local behavioral health authorities for crisis response services on page. All right. Oh, no, sorry, bottom of page 4 of the bill, there's mandated increases for the program, $8 million in fiscal '23, $9 million in '24, and $10
Okay,
million
but
in
don't
'25.
bury the lead. We do have, this has been a program that's been around, right?
Correct.
And it's at 5 million. So it
Correct. The
didn't jump
current
to 8.
fiscal,
It's moving from 5 to 8,
yes.
right?
And then there's also an additional requirement that a third of the funding be used for mobile crisis teams. Those are, you'll see those defined on the bottom of page 5, going on to page 6. Those are teams that are established, operate 24 hours a day. I think these are already in existence in a number of counties. Concept is prioritize limiting interaction with law enforcement and for individuals in crisis, and coordinating patient follow-up and basically responding to behavioral health crises instead of a law enforcement intervention. No amendments from finance?
Did you have a question, Senator Eckert?
No, I'm just finding the bill.
Gotcha. I mean, obviously, no need to tell anybody here the importance of this, and particularly as we've seen this year. Senator Elfreth.
Well, then I'll be brief, Mr. Chair. My county has a world-renowned, literally was recognized just last year for this program, and I think this is a great compliment to the work that we're doing on accountability issues and making sure that we're also investing in necessary behavioral health support for our law enforcement and our communities. So all I wanted to say. Thank you.
You have a question, Senator Griffin?
Mr. Chairman, I would move favorable.
Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous. All right. All right. Now we're going to go back to 926.
So Senate Bill 926, this was a revised reprint that we just ran around passing out. So what this would do is basically fold into the Maryland Stadium Authority's, management structure and debt service structure and all of that, a Hagerstown multi-use sports and event facility. So really kind of the pertinent stuff is, I guess the first one is on page 7, is kind of the first substantive part of doing that. This provision caps the total debt outstanding for this facility at $59.5 million. On the next page, it talks about, specific to this one, about the approval by the BPW to issue the bonds. 45 days they need to report to the fiscal committees in terms of a comprehensive financing plan. In the middle of the page, line 16, initially this bill came in with a requirement of $3.75 million from the state lottery fund to pay the debt service. This amendment that you have now just says sufficient to finance the project. In the middle of the page, in the unnumbered lines, it's about restrictions on things that need to happen, like a written agreement, prior to issuing bonds. The following language then details what the contents of that agreement need to be. On page 9 of the reprint, basically it establishes a special fund for which would be a revolving fund to implement it, and then to pay any expenses by the Maryland Stadium Authority for their, management and anything related to the Hagerstown multi-use sports and events facility. And then the last pertinent piece of this is on page 11. What this provision does is it outlines basically the various distributions that exist from the state lottery fund. And the new language pertaining to the Hagerstown facility is beginning in lines 32, where basically under the amendments, under the existing distribution to MSA of $20 million from the state lottery fund, which is outlined in lines 12 through 15, it would then take out of that $20 million, whatever the amount is that's sufficient to service the project's debt for this particular facility. So I believe that covers the substantive parts of the bill.
Okay, so obviously this is a big deal. This is a big deal for Hagerstown, for Washington County. It's been going on for a while. They've got a downtown issue, quite frankly, that has, like a lot of downtowns across America, really. And this is a stadium, but it's also an economic opportunity that they hope to do other things there and sort of build around with the other things. We've made investments in downtown Hagerstown already over the years, and with another, what's it called, Maryland, what's the venue down there?
Maryland Theater.
Maryland Theater. I think the change was made because the administration indicated that they're interested in this project, and whether or not it's serviced by 30 years of debt for the whole project, or actually a portion of that, and a portion with a direct capital investment without debt service. It's a little yet to be seen at the moment. But that is pretty much the nature of it. I was going to let the Senator describe his project a little bit more, but I know how into it is, and we only have so much time.
Sure, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for the record, I've never done a PowerPoint before until last week, so I just wanted to, I know that my former colleague was very fond of that, and I was just trying to, follow in that spirit for him, for you guys. But anyways, as the chairman said, this is a very vital project for our community. It's something that's been talked about for many, many years. The reality of it is, I spoke about during the bill hearing, this isn't about baseball or about a stadium. It's about an economic development revitalization project that we've studied for many, many times and kicked around. Just with all these amendments, we've been working constantly with the Maryland Stadium Authority on this. I would ask Mr. Chair, I'm still waiting to hear back from them on the final review. They're supposed to let me know here today. They've had all these amendments. There was just one thing they wanted to check on, so I should have information on that here later today. And as you discussed about the other thing with the administration, my understanding is they're meeting today as well. So I appreciate being able to have the opportunity to have this discussion, but it's something that we really see in our area. Just as I said before, an opportunity that it rarely comes along for us, and it's one that that we are very appreciative of and hopeful that we can capitalize on this opportunity and not let it slip away, because we really feel it's a one-time thing that's going to really transform things here that for the better. So I really appreciate the committee's interest in this, and hopefully we'll get some positive response back from those other entities and can move forward. But I appreciate the discussion here and happy to answer any questions.
Senator Young?
I just wanted to speak for the project for a minute. I found it interesting during the presentation where I won't use names, but the one speaker said he had opposed the university downtown. I was the lead on pushing the university downtown and took a tremendous amount of abuse from the Washington County officials who didn't want it downtown at the time, even to the point that a couple of them tried to get me fired. But this is a project that's really good for Hagerstown, and unlike back the university time, I think the elected officials are all for it. The community's behind it. Hagerstown has made a lot of efforts, but they really need an extra boost to get Hagerstown back to what it used to be. And I think this is a great project, and I commend the Senator on having been through a number of projects like that. I commend him on how great a job he did in presenting it, and I think it's well worthy of the state supporting wholeheartedly.
Okay. Yeah, so why don't we, I'm prepared to vote on it and say that if we need to bring in another amendment or something a little later, we can adjust that. I'm ready to, is from my perspective, I'm ready to move forward. Anybody have any objection to that? Okay. All those in favor? Senator Peters? We need you on that one. Okay. Unanimous. We'll keep following that and see exactly how the financing starts to materialize. Congratulations, Mr. Freshman Senator. All right. You might notice a theme on this voting session. It wasn't really on purpose. I told you that we were going to put sort of some of the more expensive things this week to deal with, but the theme overall that, from my mind, is this commitment to what I believe is one Maryland. I may say something on the floor about this too, in the sense that we had some conversations during some tax measures about what this specific tax was for, and that's why this happened, and this and that. Well, I'll tell you why. What really happens in this committee, from my perspective, what really happens in this committee is that we pull everything together, and whether it's raising revenues or working on projects, it's for the whole state. And I believe that's the way it should be, and that's what makes me proud about this committee. So, next up, 803.
Alrighty, you have a reprint on your desk for this bill. This bill is all new code language. It creates a Western Maryland Economic Future Investment Program. Beginning on page 3, it establishes a board, including the membership of the board. Then on page 4, it creates a special fund. And the purpose of this fund is for grant funding for capital infrastructure projects and business development projects. On page 5 at the top, this deals with the funding part of that. And the amendment here, this bill initially came in with a $20 million required appropriation. Under this amendment, between fiscal years 23 and 27, the requirement is now $7.5 million, followed by basically authorizing the governor to do an additional 7.5 with that would basically be stating your goal of a total of $15 million to be used in this fund. At the bottom of page 5, it starts talking about proposals, contents of proposals in order to receive grants from the fund. It can be for a capital infrastructure project, lines 23 and on. Lines 29, a business development project. And then on page 6, any other project that the board determines would promote economic development. The board is supposed to establish criteria to review and rate the project proposals. And then on page 7, there's a reporting requirement. That would be an annual report. And then this bill is subject to sunset in 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pretty well explained this when we had the bill hearing. We have the Western Maryland Economic Development Task Force, which we established last year to look at the 3 western counties and economic situation they're in to try to figure out something that might be helpful to get us out of that last place in about every category in the state. I think the task force put a lot of time and energy into this. I think this can be something for other parts of the state to look at. We believe that the locals need to have some skin in the game. That's why we have some matches in here, so it's not totally 100% grants. You got to put some skin in the game, which makes it more likely that what you're working on is going to work. There is some payback if you don't accomplish what you say in the request or the board to evaluate the programs or the projects and approve them or not. It's evenly spread between the 3 counties. We originally asked for $20 million. I know that's probably a stretch for rural parts of the state to ask for a lot of money, but we thought that was appropriate. And talking with the chair, figured, I said, well, you know, we could take 15. That'd be very, very helpful. So I thank the chairman for working to get something that looks good. I would only ask one thing, and I'm not a writer of these bills, but just to make it more specific that what we're looking for, where it says for fiscal years 23, in addition to the funds required under the governor may include, would it be appropriate to put somewhere in there that the intent of this is for 15 million overall, but for fiscal years we're asking the governor to put in, if he would, up to 7.5 million, that make it a little stronger what the intent originally was without mandating another 7.5 million. Just asking the question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so to me, saying the governor may include is stronger than stating the intent, but we can certainly perhaps add a subparagraph Roman 3 that saying the intent is that, you know, annually it would be 15 million, just to put that $15 million in the law.
Yeah, I'm not saying change number 2 there.
Okay.
I'll leave it, but just add, I think it makes it a little bit stronger, a little bit more intent of what we're doing, because after another year, we're going to have another governor, so hopefully that would make them look at it pretty favorably. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. We think this, like I said, is a good approach that other parts of the state might look at when they want to try to do some programs like this. I'd move favorable.
All right. All those in favor? One Maryland. All right. 172.
Senate Bill 172 is the Maryland Health Equity Resource Act. The bill establishes a process for the creation of health equity resource communities. It's similar in concept to the HEZ program, the Health Enterprise Zone program from a few years back. As the bill came in, the B&T is primary, finance secondary. As the bill came in, there were some significant tax components to it, an increase to the alcohol tax to fund it, and then some tax credits. Those are taken out of the bill. And then you have a reprint on your desk. This is kind of a compilation. Some of this is from some amendments adopted to the House version. and some are new related to the bill. The first part of the bill, as you recall, in the Relief Act, there was $14 million earmarked for the CHRC to use for purposes in alignment with the concept of this new program. So on page handwritten 3 of your reprint, page 3 through the first half of 5, this is a section specifying that money would go to a fund controlled by the CHRC, establish processes for the CHRC to, over the next fiscal 21 and 22, use that $14 million as kind of a bridge program to the new Health Equity Resource Communities program that would start in July 1, 2022. There is language in here that, bottom of page 3, that requests for proposals and applicants demonstrate how the proposed use could be leveraged into a future health equity resource community. There's also language at the top of page 4 that references giving priority to areas previously designated as a health enterprise zone. Moving on to handwritten page 5, the tax piece is introduced was the funding mechanism. This is a replacement for that funding mechanism. And what this is doing is, some of you may have heard during some of the budget processes, there's potential use for some money from the reinsurance fund program. And so what this does is it directs for fiscal 23, this is on the top of handwritten page 6, for fiscal 23, 24, and 25, it requires $15 million to be put in the Health Equity Resource Community Fund as the funding source for that program. The remainder of the bill has some clarifying changes. There's changes adding in references to federally qualified health centers. On handwritten page 9 of the reprint, the advisory committee, in here there's the addition of the chair of the Community Health Resources Commission, so that they're involved in the new advisory committee. The advisory committee is fairly long. I think finance may be having some discussions about paring that down a little bit, but I have not received those yet. They are secondary, so they may be able to handle that by amendment. And then, as I said before, CHRC, the chair of CHRC will be the designated chair of the advisory committee up to July 1, 2022, and then the chair will be selected, designated by the Secretary of Health. The remainder of the bill is largely the creation of the program. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the policy aspects.
Thank you very much, and I have a number of questions. Is that all right? Okay, first of all, how is this envisioned to function with a lot of the existing things that we have? Like on the Eastern Shore, we have local health planning entities. We have our county council, like our regional councils, and out of our regional councils, we have a health subgroup. We have the AHEC, the Area Health Education Center for the Eastern Shore. I'm just trying to figure out how many more entities we create with a limited, in the rural area, for a limited pool of people, because we all wind up being on all of these things together, and it seems to be like somewhere it ought to fit a little better. That's one question. The other one is, how many people are on the board, the advisory group, and is this taking the community health resources in another transition or journey into being something else? Just some of those questions. And the reason I ask some of these is I'm on the STAR Commission, and we are looking at just what combination of things work together to have an efficient group over time?
So my understanding is that the intent is not to create competition between programs. I think the idea is that existing organizations can come together to submit the application to get the benefits of the program, which
You had one of these zones before, I think, didn't you, on the Eastern Shore?
Yeah.
Health Enterprise. And
Yeah.
I think, I guess, am I correct that, I think there were 4 or 5 of these around the
Right.
state. And they, I guess because of lack of funding, they kind of went defunct. Is that accurate? Okay. So, as was pointed out, there's a line in there about thinking about those as a priority, and particularly in the initial round of all of this. So the idea wasn't necessarily in relation to this issue in particular, not to necessarily reinvent something that's maybe even loosely still there.
Well,
what it's worth.
we have another group that was created to be able to look at how rural health care was delivered, and that's still, I think, out there, which complicates it. And then, in my mind, it just would fit better, but this is a personal bias that I have, that it would fit better in with general economic development, because healthcare, in my mind, is economic development. And a lot of times when we do the health thing, apart from that, and I've always believed this, for healthcare reform, until healthcare reform didn't really take off until we got the business community and the health people together. And so how do we do that? Or how do we leave flexibility in our regions around the state to be able to form it, to create what fits for them, without prescribing it? I guess that's what I'm asking. How do you create the concept, but then let people make it what fits within local systems of delivery? Because the lead players in our area are going to be the county councils, the health officers, the FQACs, and the hospital system, and the AHEC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do hear your concern, Senator Eckert. I guess what I would say is how I view this bill a little different than some of the other groups that you described, even, having worked with the local health department and worked on several community boards that, coordinate and speak through the state. One of the things that I think this bill creates is a statewide approach, not to rural health, not to any of those individualized, localized abilities, but a statewide approach to addressing health disparities, including all industries of, public interaction with the healthcare system and government. And you're right, there's going to be probably some expertise from different parts of the state that are people that are serving on other boards and commissions. But it really, when I look at the makeup of the group in the amendments of the bill, it looks like there's a broader audience than I've seen in some of the other smaller subject-specific groups. So, for example, on page 7, when they're walking through this, they've considered bringing people from dental care and behavioral health and care transformation. They have a consumer, they have advocacy. So when you look at all of the folks that they have represented, this looks huge and almost unwieldy, but I think there would be a voice from the communities that contribute to the response to healthcare statewide. So it probably wouldn't be 20 people from the Eastern Shore or 20 people from Prince George's County. It would be a variety of people from across the state taking a big picture view of the state's response to health disparities. That's how I view this. And having resources ongoing to address the issues as they're identified strategically. So I don't know if that helps kind of think about it differently than this group and this group and this group.
That's helpful. I mean, and that was my other part of my question, is this beginning, I know some of us have talked about this, you know, what's going to be the future role for the community health resources? And
Yeah, just real quickly on that, because, I mean, you know, in subcommittee, I mean, I think this is the purpose of putting this with them wasn't to take away their other responsibilities, quite frankly. It adds to the overall responsibilities. The responsibilities that are there, and I know you know this as a member of the subcommittee, is we want to fully fund them with the job that they're doing right now. And we're going to ensure that as we pass the budget this year. And actually work to take away a confusing, I think, confusing situation with the senior prescription drug program. But the idea being that it does need its own set of funding for its original purposes, and then there will be this funding for this new purpose.
yeah, and that's what we need to be clear with, you know, if we're going to do one or the other, and how do we keep that straight? Exactly.
No question.
And Senator Eckert, in the
Thank you.
bill on handwritten page 5, there are provisions, you know, paragraph 8, it specifies that, you know, the $14 million from the Relief Act, it's making clear that that is not CHRC's existing program is CHRC's existing program. The $14 million is something separate. There's no commingling. It's not meant to supplant anything the CHRC is getting that it is part of its usual program for that 1 year transition period.
And then what's going to be the ongoing amount? Or,
CHRC
yeah, for this program?
for the new program.
Yes.
There's 15 million designated for 23, 24, and fiscal 23, 24, and 25.
Correct, thank you. It's a lot of money.
And the designation of the communities will be July 122, which is fiscal 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I see here that this originally was supposed to be funded by an alcohol tax. It's taken out.
That's taken
There's no
out.
taxes in here.
That's taken out. All the tax credits are also taken out too, based on the question of the federal provision.
Okay, and I'm trying to look through this list.
So yeah, Senator Edwards, handwritten page 21 through basically the end of the bill. That's taking out the tax credit on the alcohol tax base.
That's what I read into it. I'm reading all these people who are going to be on this board or whatever we're calling it. Pretty large group, but I would like to suggest, because I didn't see it here, and I heard my colleague from Prince George's County say this is a statewide involvement of everybody. Well, I would like to see, especially under the, wherever it is, I had it here and lost it, the appointments by the president and the speaker, that they have to consider geographic spread of their appointments. And I say this because, and again, we're a little unique to the state. Our two major hospitals, there may be some metropolitan area tied into D.C., but Allegheny and Garrett hospitals, Garrett's tied into West Virginia University, Cumberland's tied into University of Pittsburgh. So there's some different dynamics there. And I think originally when University of Pittsburgh took over the hospital in Cumberland, Allegheny County, there was some, we had to work things out with them accepting the Maryland insurance. So I would ask that we look at putting something there, at least under those two categories, the appointments by the president, distribution of their appointments. I would offer that as amendment to be stuck in there, Mr. Chairman.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, I
just had a question because I think the senator makes a good point. My only question is the secretary, I'm looking at, is it Philip, the secretary who makes all of those other appointments, or all those appointments are made by the presiding officers?
So there's appointments made by the governor, appointments made by the president, and appointments made by the speaker. The gubernatorial appointments are handwritten, page 9, line 25. The president appointments are handwritten, page 10, line 12. And the speaker appointments are handwritten, 11, line 4. And as I mentioned before earlier, I've been told that there may be some discussion in finance about the composition of the advisory committee.
Yeah, then I support that suggestion, and I think there's probably language in another bill already that we can pull from that gets at what you've just described.
So on page, handwritten page 12 of the bill, at the top, lines 3 through 5, it has a provision about, I think you find this fairly commonly in code, to the extent practicable, reflect racial, ethnic, gender diversity of the state. You could add geographic.
Yeah. I think that.
I'd say add it to all the appointments, all those categories.
Go through the, sort of the governance again on this, just because I just want to get clear on that. So there's the money that's immediate that we put in the Relief Act, and I think there's a distinction between the governance on that and,
Yes.
and the next. I just want to make sure that we understand that and see if we agree with that.
Yes, so the Relief Act, 14 million, that is this new language that you see inserted at the bottom of handwritten page 3 through handwritten page 5. And so that would go to CHRC, the bottom of handwritten page 3, there's links that, they should demonstrate that they could be, sustainable as a health equity resource community when that, program becomes active a year later. CHRC would, develop criteria for giving the grants. The kind of overall purpose, paragraph 3 online, handwritten page 3, reducing health disparities, improving health outcomes. That provision, that's also language that's in the Health Equity Resource Community Bill. CHRC is required to establish criteria to qualify for the grant funding. The grants are awarded for 2 years to get through the end of fiscal 22. It allows one additional staff for CHRC to implement. And then there's some reporting requirements. And actually, paragraph 5, that should be changed to October 1, 2021. January 1, 2021 is already passed. So there'll be an interim report of what they've awarded, and then, a final report with any data they have on the effectiveness of the grant programs that they've awarded. And then also recommending, using that information to make any recommendations that, maybe may want to be incorporated into the Health Equity Resource Community Program when that becomes active. And then there's a separate fund established, and then provisions clarifying that the CHRC existing program is not this $14 million. Those are separate programs. They're not commingled. And the $14 million is not intended to supplant or take the place of any CHRC functions. This provision would sunset at the end of fiscal 2022, and then beyond that, it would transition to the Health Equity Resource Community Program starting July 1, 2022. So these entities would, I guess the bill's silent on whether they would carry through as eligible recipients. I think they would have to apply again under the new program is governed by, there's an advisory board that we've discussed a little bit that would make recommendations. So the commission for the first year of the Health Equity Resource Community Program, July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, will be the default chair of that new program. So that'll provide some continuity from the bridge program that's under CHRC with the Relief Act money to when the new Health Equity Resource Community Program starts the following, after that in fiscal 23. So chair of CHRC will be chair of CHRC and chair of the new program for the first year of the program. After the first year, the Secretary of Health would designate the chair of the program. I believe the secretary is the one who designates the communities. That's on handwritten page 14, subsection A. And Senator Edwards, there is also a provision here at the bottom of handwritten page 14, and secretary shall consider geographic diversity when designating the communities.
What role in the new the community resources, the director of that have in the new portion?
They would be a de facto member of the advisory committee.
So a member of the advisory committee?
Yes. And the advisory committee duties are on handwritten page 9.
Right. I need to, at least from my perspective, and I know I feel like we're making some good progress on this, but I'd like to make a call today and talk to the, maybe we can do that together with the chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Luckner, and talk about that aspect of it and the governance aspect of it. Senator Eckert?
Thank you very much. So we're creating a structure that will have two parts. It'll be short-term and it'll be longer-term to be able to create funds and the structure to be able to award funds to programs that are going to deliver services to our health disparity regions or designated areas, right? Wouldn't it be simpler to just have a grant program within existing structures to do that? I'm just concerned that money's not going to go to services or people, and we're going to overload an existing. I mean, if there's already a structure to deliver services in place, then the funds need to go to the people who are delivering the services to expand their outreach, to reach the pockets of folks. And that would be determined by the local health plans that are already in play, correct? I'm just trying to get my head around it.
No, I understand. That's fine. This is important. We want to get this right. Tell you what, I think some of us have a meeting right now that we need to get to. And as I said, I wanted to hold this anyway to have that conversation with Mr. Luckner. But I think we got a good picture of it all. So at least when we come back on this, presumably tomorrow, we'll be in good shape to move forward. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.